ASEAN has obviously become the center for the international arena. This community has become the place where the source of growth of global economy and appears to remain so in the years to come. That's why every road is moving toward ASEAN. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you the 4 distinguished guest speakers on the first panel discussion, Why ASEAN, an Investment Destination. Please give a warm welcome to President and Chief Executive Officer, PTT Public Company Limited, Dr. Pailin Chuchottaworn. Dr. Nguyen, Chairman of the Board of Directors, Sovico Holdings. President, the Stock Exchange of Thailand, Mr. Charamporn Jotikasathira. President, Ajinomoto Company Limited, Thailand, Ajinomoto Company Incorporation, ASEAN Headquarters, Mr. Yoichiro Togashi. And the session will be moderated by Partner and Managing Director, the Boston Consulting Group, Bangkok Office, Mr. Douglas Jackson.
Can you hear me okay? Maybe just to begin this morning's session, just a couple of observations on ASEAN, if I may, to introduce the topic. So by any reasonable measure, ASEAN should be considered another BRIC. If we look at its combined GDP, it's higher than Russia or Brazil. If we look at its economic growth rate, the rates of growth are higher than most countries in the BRIC. Its population is higher than Russia and Brazil combined. And the proportion of global exports at about 7% are on par with the rates of exports from India, Brazil, and Russia. Quietly and surprisingly, with little fanfare, there have been massive investments in infrastructure across ASEAN that will link member states, not only with each other, but also with the broader regions outside ASEAN, namely South Asia and China. Chinese investment already is underway to build a gas pipeline that will link Myanmar to the southern province of Yunnan in China. And if we look at Chinese investments, there also is effort underway currently to build a railroad that will link Myanmar to China, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Laos, Vietnam, all the way back into China again. And in Thailand, major road construction is underway linking an east-west corridor, a north-south corridor that will link most of the ASEAN economies very strong and centrally through Thailand. And if we look on the front of trade liberalization, substantial progress has already been made. So among the ASEAN 6 member states, trade tariffs are already at an average of 0%. Now clearly there is much more progress to be made on non-trade barriers within ASEAN, non-tariff barriers, but progress is being made. So I was a bit surprised when I read a report that had been produced by the Economic Intelligence Center at Siam Commercial Bank, which said that about 50% of Thai companies are actually have applied for and made use of some of the benefits that are available under the ASEAN agreements. Only about 50% as of 2011. So this raises a question, I guess, and Charamporn, this will be a question that's directed at you firstly. I mean, I've heard you speak at public forums in Thailand before, and I know that you're a very strong advocate for Thai companies and more broadly companies around ASEAN to wake up to the fact of ASEAN. Why the urgency?
Well, definitely as everyone knows, in 2015, all the barrier will be down. And what we've been seeing is that the ready of preparedness of the firms are quite different among, even within the listed firm in the stock exchange. I would divide it into two groups. If you look at the group that should have an opportunity, is that if you're traveling around let's say, the surrounding country, surrounding us, the greater Mekong sub-region, you see that a lot of the products consumed in the country surrounding Thailand, which will have much higher growth than Thailand. I mean, Thailand GDP like 4, 5, or lower, close to 6% is pretty on the middle road. It's not exciting anymore. But the country surrounding us, very high growth. But if you look at what they consume, all the products, goods, and services, you see the Thai brands everywhere. So the opportunity is there. So if you ask, if I'm the CEO of these companies, where would the growth be? Very likely the opportunity is there. It's not here, not here in Thailand anymore. And the Thai brand are considered as a premium brand also. So I strongly believe that there should be many companies that should be able to take advantage. However, the state of readiness is quite different. I think even in large companies, if you ask some of the executives that who's going to go to other countries to stay and work in other countries, you don't see a lot of volunteers that much from the Thai, and that's worrying me. So that's the first group, that the opportunities is there. Are we ready? The language barrier and so forth. But the other group that worries me more is the group that has a very high profit today in Thailand, and maybe pretty much inwardly focused on carrying more profit, squeezing more profit from within the country, without looking outward that in the next few years all the barrier will be down, and that means anyone can walk into our country, when vice versa we should be able to go elsewhere too. But if we're not ready, basically they're going to come to Thailand and enjoy these profits that we already have today, especially in financial sectors that I see. I think I envy financial sector that the profit is like 25%, 40% per year, and the growth is so high, the margin is so high, but not expanding as much, especially have not followed the clients. I mean, most of the corporate clients, let's say the PTT, the Sam Cement Group, Kun Pailin sit here, they've been everywhere in ASEAN and globally, but not many Thai financial institutions actually follow. So I would urge that we should be more serious about the playing field. That will not be Thailand anymore. It will be the 590 million people playing field, and huge demand and huge supply and huge competition out there.
Yeah. So even though the urgency may not be to expand outside Thailand, it's to prepare yourself for the competition that is inevitably likely to come. Can I turn to you, Dr. Pailin? I think PTT among Thai corporates, you could argue it's certainly more forward-thinking in terms of its presence around the region. Maybe if you can talk about the evolution of that thinking. I mean, what is the rationale behind your fairly aggressive investments you've been making around Southeast Asia?
Thank you, good Douglas. PT, we operating in all ASEAN 10 countries at the moment. And we foresee that this is an opportunity for PT Group to expand. If one look at the map, geographically we are a group of countries that are located between two major powers. At the north, we have the China, 1.2 billion people. In the west, we have India with another 1.1 billion people. And Myanmar is the only country that have the common border with these two major economic force to be. From the economic viewpoint, we are the only region in the world that still have a reasonable positive growth in the last many years. We are food producer, we are food exporter, so we self-sufficient in terms of food supply. We have labor with 600 million people. And quite a few of you may know that our labor cost now is cheaper than China already. So we are located comfortably between two economic forces that will move the world. I think we will be definitely an alternative investment location for investors who really looking at the two major power, China or India, but it's not really ready to go there. I would think that in the future, land connection will be more important than the sea connection. Given that moving from east to west or west to east, that we start to see more hostile water. In the west, the Malacan state is more crowded and less with piracy. On the east, South China Sea become more and more hostile. So if you look at the map and look at the horizontal linkage, starting from Da Nang to the west to the Lam Chabang port of Thailand, and then move further to the way of Myanmar, and then cross Indian Ocean into Chennai of India. This will be one of the very powerful connection, land and sea connection, that will link the two sides of the world, the east and the west. We have the China, mainland China, India, Korea on the east, and then India on the west, Europe on the west. So ASEAN, from geographical viewpoint, will be the bridge to bridge the two. And that whoever can bring any goods on board into ASEAN then can be distributed to any place among these 2.4 billion people. So by all means, from PTT viewpoint, we foresee that this as an opportunities. The opportunity is not among ourselves, and the opportunity is that how we ASEAN 10 can further extend our economic might, economic success story into China and India in the future.
And I think, having spoken to foreign executives who look at ASEAN, they see, it's my perspective, and I'd like to get your reaction to it, a perspective that foreign companies do tend to see, not all, but many tend to see ASEAN as one piece in a larger trade puzzle, as you've indicated, between China to the north and South Asia to the west. Is that a perspective that among your colleagues in Thailand is also shared, or is that?
More and more towards that direction. Of course, we have more than 20 years of history to unite the ASEAN into one. But given the success record that we have done in the past few years, I think the ASEAN to be united in one economic bloc under the name of AEC is more and more realistic. We start to learn how to live together, and you might see that the 5 countries on the north side of the ASEAN, I call continental ASEAN, is really, really monolithic. I mean, we have the 250 million people with the single religions and very common culture. So that is really one piece of very monolithic economic bloc that any investor can feel with. So yes, we are moving in that direction.
So speaking of foreign companies which are operating within the region, Togashi-san, I think it's safe to say Ajinomoto has been operating in Thailand now since the 60s, and you have operations all over Southeast Asia, I think 6 production sites around ASEAN. I guess one question that would stand out to me is, as you look at the implementation of all of the principles under AC 2015, if fully implemented, how will that impact your business? I mean, you're already a fairly international operation within the region. What changes for you going forward?
Okay, thank you. Regarding the implementation of AFTA program, we have already carried out many actions and necessary action during these 10 years, because we have a long history in ASEAN, what we call ASEAN 6 countries. ASEAN 6 means Thailand and Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, and Philippines, and Malaysia. In these ASEAN 6 countries, actually, we have long history. So the point is concerning the cross-border products competitiveness. It's because we have the amino acid, including Ajinomoto, which requires a very competitive product. So we decided that export base or factory of these bulk products should be focused on 2 countries in Asia, in Thailand and also in Indonesia. And also considering the global cost competitiveness. At the same time, we continue local production of other countries. We continue producing to meet the local demand, mainly products for consumer products. Then so in each country, we will conduct making the investment according to the demand, growth of the demand. This is our basic strategy.
So what, but you've had that strategy for some time around creating local production in each of the Southeast Asian countries. What frees up for you? I mean, what changes going forward under AAC 2015? So
export base, we decided to focus. But for the consumer product, we focus on each local production. We continue. So this is an important point because we respect the locality, and our basic policy is local production by local raw materials, local talents, and also local sales. This is our basic policy. Based on this, we consider the export strategy. This is our thought.
Okay, good. Maybe if I could turn to you again, Kun Charamporn. Dr. Pailin had referred to ASEAN being an important bridgehead, if you will, into other markets, South Asia and China. Given that you have many discussions with executives across many sectors in Thailand, is that also a topic that you're seeing other executives are aware of? Are they beginning to think of ASEAN more broadly as ASEAN linked to China and other countries?
In general, yes. However, but if you look at the investment ahead of where the focus is going to be, at least the one that will have a major impact on us, on Thailand, is mainly the government will invest in about 2.2 trillion, and these will be the transportation from north to south, and mainly the high-speed train for commuters and the dual track for the goods, plus the making Bangkok as a metropolitan with all these subway facility. Therefore, if you look at what will be growing on top of that, would be the goods and services between north-south, between China down to Malaysia, or from Myanmar to Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So if we were to focus on these, you see that there'll be 3 rings. The big rings, as you mentioned, is like the India, China, and ASEAN. The second ring, which is slightly smaller, which is the ASEAN. traditional ASEAN. But the one that I just mentioned to you is pretty much the Greater Mekong sub-region, which is Thailand happened to be smack in the middle. We cannot deny that we have to be focusing on what will be the impact of that. And these are the things that a lot of development that involve the stock exchange of Thailand and the listed firm will be focusing on. Namely, if there are going to be a lot of development on transportation in Thailand, then there'll be lots of goods and services in the Greater Mekong sub-region. So there'll be, should be a lot of expansion of the listed firm doing business in these countries. Now, either they are having factories or they have subsidiaries. How would the Stock Exchange of Thailand help? These are the things that under discussion is already, some are already in the plan of the SET. An example would be we would like our exchange to be the hub to raise funds to fuel the economic growth of this region. How? Now, if any company would have a subsidiary in any country, not only Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, even Philippines, Indonesia, the SEC has approved a new type of listing called holding company. Why holding company? Because a holding company, especially a holding company that register in Thailand, at least we know who they are, and most of them will be a holding company that has some relation or subsidiary or partner of a Thai listed firm. Now, these holding companies have subsidiary anywhere, actually anywhere in the world, but if you ask me, the focus would be the Greater Mekong sub-region and ASEAN. So with that in mind, the first quarter of this year, there'll be at least 2 companies that will be listed. One is a CK Power, which is a power company in Laos by the Cho Kan Chang Group. Another one would be Amata Vietnam, which is real industrial estate in Vietnam within the Amata Group. This would be as example. So we can use our strength of ability to raise funds at a low cost at the SET to help fueling the economic growth in the region. So this is one example that I would say the people who I talk to mostly are discussing with the inner ring of what should we do within the Greater Mekong sub-region.
Yeah. So maybe follow up on that. I mean, I've been following a little bit some of the work that the SET has done to integrate with some of the other regional exchanges or exchanges in the region. Can you talk a little bit further about some of those initiatives, what are underway, what's underway, and what the direction you're taking the stock exchange?
Of course, there are 2 fronts. If you look at the attractiveness of the stock exchange in this region, Thailand is number 27, and number 27 is fairly small. I mean, just now, if we combine the entire ASEAN exchanges together, which today we have 6 countries, 7 exchanges, this will become the 9th largest exchanges in the world. I mean, combined with $2.2 trillion market cap. From any investment fund managers, no matter how large, the 9th largest economy in the world will be on the investment radar for sure. So the first thing what we did is we co-promote together an ASEAN as asset class. So in the next few months, the FTSE will come up with indices related to ASEAN. First will be ASEAN Star Index, which is consists of 30 most exciting stocks in 6 countries. So there are 180 stocks. So imagine if anyone wants to invest in ASEAN, they can buy a product of, let's say, ETF of ASEAN Star. Every 100 million come to $100 million come into the ASEAN Star, about 18 million will come to Thailand, and the rest. So basically, by joining the club, there'll be like more channel to attract the investment. So that would be the first thing. The second thing that we did is the ASEAN linkages. This will allow inter-ASEAN transaction. So today, the Thai can buy up to 2,200 stocks today if you call your broker, and vice versa. So today you can buy the Malaysian stocks and Singapore stocks. However, the plan was that we should be ready by 2015. Why I said that? The stock exchange, all the ASEAN together, invest for the broker. So basically, the broker did not have to invest anything, but today you can order the transaction through the other exchanges. However, the important part is the back office. How do you settle? How do you clear? These are something that Thailand has not put foot forward of what do we want to be in the next 10 years or so, where the financial hub like Hong Kong and Singapore has done it for the past 30 years, which is basically anyone who wants to invest anywhere in the world can go to Singapore or can go to Hong Kong. Today in Thailand, even though today our daily turnover already exceeds Singapore, the number of very exciting stock in stock exchange in Thailand is equal to the same number as in Singapore now. But if anyone who wants to invest anywhere other than Thailand, if you walk into a Thai broker, they are still fairly difficult. And 10 brokers are probably doing 10 different things. It's unlike the Hong Kong and Singapore broker. This will take time, maybe about 18 months to iron out. So the way that we initiate the ASEAN linkages is that is a first step to make everyone alert that today we really have to focus on providing service to our investor, which most of the investors today will not invest only in Thai stocks. They're going to invest in the US, UK, everywhere. So an ASEAN link is just
So process and policy harmonization is the first step. Is mergers and acquisitions among the exchanges, is that within the cards? I mean, consolidating the exchanges, or is that too far out?
It will be difficult in this region.
Yeah.
I think even Australia and Singapore tried, it didn't work. It's
Okay.
going to be far-fetched, I think.
Good. Well, let me shift gears a little bit. I mean, so creation of ASEAN as an investment class, an asset class that is attractive to foreign investment and local investment as well. I think there's a country in Southeast Asia that probably has learned a lot from the experience of very, very high levels of FDI. And Dr. Hung, I'd turn to you. And I mean, if we look at FDI into a country relative to GDP, Vietnam clearly has the highest rate of investment in the economy. But it's not been entirely a bed of roses. I mean, if we look at some of the effects that have unfolded in the economy, maybe if I could have you talk about some of the opportunities and challenges that such a high level of investment creates, and what are some of the lessons that we can take away from that?
Hello. So thank you for your question. Let's first would like to talking about ASEAN. So ASEAN we founded in 1967. Now 10 countries, including Vietnam. So we know that ASEAN now with 600 million people is 10% of world population, and with 2.2 trillion US dollar GDP. Yes, so that's the ASEAN now in the heart of Asia. And if ASEAN will be the single country until 2015. So it will be ninth largest country. So ASEAN now, ASEAN has been a magnet, increasingly attracting investment from multinational corporation. And ASEAN countries themselves also seek investment opportunities in the region in advance of ASEAN integration by 2015. This connectivity will increase the competitive capability and investment attraction from foreign country to ASEAN member country. Yes, China, we can see that's one of the world's most powerful economies. It also focuses investment to ASEAN. Yes, China now have been invested already $18.8 billion US dollar, and 70% of that's this make last 4 years ago. Yes. And in ASEAN, you can quickly find the people who understand you and your business needs. And the region, 600 million people are playing a growing role in our interconnected global economy. In ASEAN, a huge labor market, young people are working, and for example, in Vietnam, 65% of labor under 35 years, young and very hardworking. And I would like to say one of things very important is in ASEAN, political stability is also very important consideration for investor. So this, for example, the Japanese manufacturer also find investment in these countries. This also the case. So that's a few things about about the ASEAN, I think.
A couple of points you made. I'd like to come back to a point a little bit later, which is an interesting point. You mentioned that you see the ASEAN linkages, the economic linkages, being a force for stability within the region, lifting economies in countries that may be relatively weak today, and therefore that raising of the economic bar raises, increases the stability of countries within the region. You also touched on another point, which is an important one, which is ASEAN as sort of a counterweight to China and India. Do you see that as being something that's important for ASEAN longer term?
Yes, I think this is very important because we have today we're talking about the political problem with China seas, with many countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei. But like businessmen, we are thinking about how to make peaceful, how to make cooperation. Yes, first of all, Vietnam have very big trading cross-border with China and Greater China, including Hong Kong, Macau, and have big leading investment in Vietnam. And then I also thinking in Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar is the investment from China very big. So this influence from China, from the neighbor country, very big. So I think China China wants to make focusing investment to ASEAN, and that's, as I said already, the investment from China now nearly $19 billion, and last 4 years increasing. Yes, that's from that point we see very important for our ASEAN.
Maybe Togashi-san, if I can turn to you. I mean, I think if I could characterize the panel's sentiment right now, it's very strong optimism towards ASEAN. But you know, as you look forward to your own growth within the region, Togashi-san, what are your key concerns to fully capitalize on the potential that ASEAN creates? What are your key issues that you face going forward?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. And ASEAN is actually geographically very attractive for us in terms of its location in between the huge country, both India and China. And we already have the business unit in both countries, but so far our business history is not so long, and also our business experience is not so deep comparing with the ASEAN countries. And so far, there are many difficulties existing, and we have to solve these problems. So we are now expecting ASEAN's role to play an important role of bridge over especially South Asian countries, such as India and Bangladesh especially. Since South Asia is far from Japan, and we would like to utilize our success story or successful business model to bring to these South Asian countries. This is our thought.
Dr. Pailin, can I have you respond to the same question?
As I say that ASEAN is our future. The opportunity is there. So my advice to a colleague executive here is that let's face it. If we start the countdown, there were only 30-something months until the AEC kick in. So whether you face it now and make the best out of it, or we wait until the game change and we start to see our market share eroded. So the advice to our colleague executive here is that you ask yourself whether you have the ASEAN plan in your hand or not. I would very much encourage you to come up with the first plan. At PTT, we have the plan and we revise it every half a year, given the change in circumstance. We intended to be a top brand in ASEAN. We intend to excel in ASEAN, and we will use ASEAN as springboard to go into an even much bigger market of India and China. I think one thing that we are lacking, the ASEAN investor, we are ASEAN operator, we are not lacking of the technologies, we are not lacking of labor, we are not lacking of the raw materials. But what we are lacking, the last thing that we're missing is the courage. Courage to accept the fact that the reality that the AEC is approaching us. And the courage that way we must start to jump out of our comfort zone for now and take the advantage of being the first to tap the opportunity of the ASEAN. Today we still see very few companies that already openly announced that I will be an ASEAN company. We see the CIMB, we see AirAsia, which is growing very fast at very explosive rate to be an ASEAN airline. A few of the companies in Thailand already announced that it will be the ASEAN company, like SCG, like PTT ourselves, and a few more, the CP Group, for example. But I think we want to see more of this type of companies that is starting to stand up, have courage to embrace this AECs that is, as I say, only 33 months to go until it will fully implemented. Are we ready for that?
Mm-hmm. So first question to ask is, do you have a plan for ASEAN? And then second is it bold enough? Is it bold enough to capitalize on the opportunity?
Right. And we must believe in ourselves that we'll be able to capture the benefit of having a joint 600 million people, and that to look further that we can export our product to another 2.4 billion people. So this is the era of ASEAN, the era of Asia. Please don't trying to anticipate when the US economy will coming back or when the European economy will get back on its foot. There's no point, and it has been, what, 4, 5, 6 years already since the crisis began. We must rely on ourselves. And we, the ASEAN, together with the two big power, China and India, probably will be the last answer how to pull the other two economies back from recession. So that is what how we looking at it.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really strong point to make. I mean, we're often asked, what are best practices, and the reference is always to North America or to Europe. But in fact, when we look at the challenges that companies have had to overcome in emerging markets like Thailand and more broadly Southeast Asia, many of the challenges around procurement and distribution, particularly in financial services as well, in many regards, the best practice is in Asia. The best practice in overcoming those challenges in Asia. And so I think to recognize that strength that local companies have, and then to think more broadly around how can they deploy those strengths to other countries around the region are certainly a principal advantage that companies operating here might have over their Western counterparts. Charamporn, if I can have you maybe put on the hat as the president of the stock exchange and think forward, 5 years. If you were to create a wish list of policies and initiatives that would need to change or should change to help facilitate the mobilization of capital for the region, what would that wish list contain?
Well, definitely the two key missions. One is to provide, one is for the listed company. So the exchange have to provide the best venue to raise capital at the lowest cost. In that way, I think we really have to look at our rule and regulation, because in the past, many agencies seem to be position themselves as a silo, but not as to tackle specific mission. Let's say if you want to provide the lowest cost of fund for a listed firm to expand in this region, what do we need to do? So basically, in the future, you probably require a lot more on the tax side. That's for sure. So in the past, maybe the tax mission is just to try to collect as much as possible. But the thing is, if the mission is to provide the growth for the industry, you have to provide more M&A. If you have more M&A, at the end you get taxed anyway. But there are a few problems that prevent that. Also, the harmonization of the rules with the country around the region, especially to follow the world-class countries, because the investment you cannot prevent them. I mean, today any firm can get listed in Hong Kong or Singapore or elsewhere. So if our rule and regulation is not good enough, the listed firm does not need to be here. Therefore, the rule and regulation from at the Bank of Thailand, at the Ministry of Finance, at SEC, or even Stock Exchange, we have to compare with the best of class. If the best of class is in Hong Kong, then so be it. And in some area, the best of class is from Singapore, so we have to compare. An example would be the REIT, the Real Estate Investment Trust. Right now, it's very popular among the investors around the world. And today, Singapore is the best position, and they have managed to provide the REIT from an asset in Hong Kong to list it in Singapore. This is an example that there are no boundary today on the capital market. So if we don't change the rule here today, who knows, a lot of the real estate friends in a listed firm may list and create a REIT in Singapore. So it's our own rule and regulation that we have to be aware of, that the competitors are the capital markets surrounding us. On the other front, on the investment side, as investors, my wish list is that an exchange like us should be the exchange of choice for investor, no matter whether the investor is a Thai or foreigner, or any foreigner who works in Thailand or live in Thailand. That should be the target. But today, our rule and regulation and even the services of our brokerage firm are still the services for anyone who wants to buy Thai stock in Thai baht. That's it. But Hong Kong and Singapore has become the exchange, the broker of choice and the country of choice for anyone who wants to invest anywhere in the world. So the rule and regulation, even from the Bank of Thailand point of view, and as a matter of fact, I talked to the governor last year that this was a problem, and the Bank of Thailand is the first one who moved. 1st of January this year, actually the Thai can move the money in and out very freely, but it turned out to be the one who implement, let's say even the Stock Exchange of Thailand, the banks, and the brokerage. We haven't changed the procedure enough to provide the better service for the investor. So what I wish is anyone who lives in Thailand, either regional hub, regional head office here, all the high net worth, I would want them to open an account with any entity here, a bank in Thailand, a broker in Thailand, and provide full services of investment to invest anywhere in the world, mainly of course Thailand and ASEAN and the rest of the world. If you notice, if you follow the investment, the investor appetite anywhere around the world, about 25% of their portfolio would be a foreign investment other than the home country. Now, which means today the Thai community, Thai bank, Thai brokerage has already opened the door to an entity elsewhere, either in Hong Kong or Singapore, to tap that business. And this business is growing because the high net worth, there'll be a lot more high net worth coming out of the wealth in this region, including the Thai. Definitely right now, they're going to be walking towards Hong Kong or Singapore to open an account there because we don't provide the service here. So there's a lot of rule and regulation and also the service mind that we should say that we want to serve an investor. And these are what the investor wants, and we really have to understand. This is not 1970 anymore, that Thailand at that time, superstar and an emerging market, the Thai stock, even though capital control, the exchange control there, people all over the world are coming in to buy Thai stocks. But today, even the Thai, one day they'll be buying 25% of their portfolio with the foreign stocks. Now, what type of service do we have today? So a lot of work that the stock exchange and our partner will have to think about.
Good. Ambitious plans and a fairly large ball to roll uphill, I think, to get some of those changes through. But
better to start now.
Yeah, good. So maybe we'll end it there. But before we conclude completely, maybe if there are any questions from members of the audience, I don't know if we have that capability set up. Yes? I'll paraphrase for you. I can hear you. That's fine.
And I believe it's viewed in the community that Thai banks are a little bit of a clique right now, and they operate themselves. They operate the Thai market pretty easily. How easy is it going to be for the for Thailand banks to join the club, as you said? I'm not sure who said that. Was it Mr. Charamporn or was it Dr. Pailin?
So the question was, if I may paraphrase, given that Thai banks have not aggressively grown outside Thailand, how easy will it be for them to do so under the auspices of the AC 2015? Yeah. Who'd like to field that question? I believe you raised the point, Kun Charamporn, about Thai banks having not yet followed their clients as aggressively overseas.
I raised the question, but I don't have the answers.
Okay.
That's a question to ask the Thai banks. But I've seen a few banks today has already gone out. A month ago, I went to Myanmar to a ceremony by one of the big banks to open up the rep in Myanmar. So I think they're working on it now. I think, although maybe if you look at last year or 2 years ago, there's not much movement there, but it looked like they're moving there. But if you ask me, it's a very good question. How ready are they? I'm not the bank today. 2 years ago when I was at the bank, I could tell you, but...
Yeah. I mean, I think just to add an observation for my part, I think, you know, the global financial crisis has really shown that flag planting by banks around the world was not risk-free, and that's probably an understatement. And I think that we're seeing many international banks pulling away from their domestic operations where they've not been able to build scale, because there is always this question of funding and adverse selection. You know, as you move into a market, how do you find borrowers who will come to you who are not already qualified by other institutions? So that is a challenge, and again, I don't think there's an easy answer to this. Certainly CIMB, I think, is pushing the envelope a little bit, really building a regional presence. And I think it's still early days for them whether that strategy will ultimately be proven correct, but certainly it is ambitious, and certainly I think they are making inroads into the region that other banks are today following suit on. But that's just one consultant's observation. Dr. Pailin?
Knowing that most of these banks have been through one of the worst time in 1997. So I believe that whenever our Bank of Thailand, they're taking away all the comfort that they are giving to all the banks that they are enjoying today, they will be able to cope with it. You know, probably will not as bad as in 1997, of which the memory is still very vivid. But of course, today with our Bank of Thailand taking away out of the comfort that they're providing, of course, they will still want to live cozily in the comfort zone. That's what we see today.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think it's also, if you look at Thai banks' business models, they have been quite innovative, and so one would expect that they have a lot to offer other markets, but certainly it's, you know, when it's so good here domestically, there's a question why move out. Are there any other questions from the audience? Yes, in the front row over to the right here.
One of your questions to the panels, I still didn't quite get the clear comments. Your question was the concept of ASEAN or AEC is good, and then you ask, what are the possible key obstacles that hinder the success of the AEC? One of the examples, like the comments from the panel as well. For example, like recently, Indonesia banned the import of durians from Thailand. And this, for example, this two more years to go to the AEC. Is it a major signal of understanding or challenge?
Did you catch the comment in question? Yeah, please.
The gentleman asking about the obstacle, positive obstacle. I would say that the only obstacle to AEC is that most of ASEAN is not really fully realized that the true meaning of the AEC, is that we must accept the free economic system. I mean, the full implementation of free economies, market economies. And only accepting the rules of market economy, then we can start to be able to enjoy the expanded market size. Quite a few of us still believe that we still can have some small special rules and regulation. Quite a few still believe that we still can enjoy some pampering from our government and yet enjoying the bigger market size, which is not true. It's a give and take. And we must accept this reality. So don't wait until the times come that we have to go out and fight. So AEC is not just simply a change of the new furniture or moving into a new homes, but it's a paradigm shift. I always make a metaphor that it's like changing from playing tennis into golfing. We know that the size of the ball is different, and we know that the size of the field is totally different. We are now playing tennis. We know the size of the field. But in golf, you'll never be able to know that what this next golf course will look like until you go into it. So we change up the crop, change the rules. So embracing AEC means that we are embracing a total new rules and regulation, a new way of thinking, and a really large population, really diversified geography. And we must win in the game. So do we want to wait until the last day and we start mastering the new game? Or we should throwing away and get rid of the existing wisdom and then take the challenge and move into the new game now? As I say, only 33 months away.
Yeah. If I could make an additional comment, I think to get to a zero tariff base among ASEAN 6 took, if I'm not mistaken, something on the order of 17 years. But it did happen, and it did happen fairly gradually. There are these non-trade or non-tariff barriers which still exist, and there are a number of exempted products that are still on these, what they call highly sensitive lists, highly sensitive product lists. I'm not sure if I've got the terminology correct. But again, even on that, there is progress still being made on each of those fronts. I think from my perspective, and there's a good report by Siam Commercial Bank, the Intelligence, Economic Intelligence Center on this, which looks at the elimination of these barriers and their relative impact on the attractiveness of Thai products in relation to those sectors. I would see it as one of gradual optimization. You operate within the limits and the barriers that exist on your that you face as a company, and as those barriers are eliminated, then you adjust your optimization equation. And I think that needs to be a process that you start, to Dr. Pailin's earlier comment, which is a clear view on how ASEAN or AC 2015 hurts or hinders you, helps or hinders you, and two, a plan for attacking it. And then constantly updating that on an annual basis to reflect changes in the underlying trade scheme. That would be my personal view. But any other questions from the floor? Does anybody else on the panel have a comment they would like to add? Okay, well with that, oh sorry, we have one gentleman down here in the front row.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Thongthé Jariyakovit from SV Leasing Thailand. I would like to ask Dr. Nguyen Tan Hung Ciao, Dr. Hung. Could you offer a recommendation? Which business sector should I invest in Vietnam? Could you can prioritize 1, 2, 3 and give me some reasons. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Hold on, let me get my pen ready. I think the question was, Dr. Hung, which specific sectors in Vietnam would you invest in?
Thank you for your question. Our group, nearly 20 years, we started from trading, become leading diversified investment group private. So we own the bank, SD Bank, one of the, today we became one of the top 10 bank in Vietnam, Joint Stock Bank. And together with banks, some other financial service. On the properties investment, we also one of their we have portfolio investment on from residential, building office, 5-star. We own the best 5-star resort from Da Nang, hotel, Gold Coast, and other thing. And together with properties, we established the allies. We Vietjet Air name. So we own the first private, and became after 1 year operation became second largest allies in Vietnam. So we just landed to Bangkok in just last couple of weeks. Start our first international flight after. After 10 domestic destinations in Vietnam. So we plan for the ally, we plan fly to on many ASEAN countries, Malaysia, Singapore, Myanmar, and other South Asia countries with the option of low-cost allies. Yes. And also we invest in industry, hydropower plant, mining resource, and starting with some oil and gas investment. So that's an opportunity, I think, in Vietnam. Vietnam still the country booming, and stability, political, and hardworking people. And I think the government very welcome for investment, tourism, with especially among of ASEAN countries. Yes, and like our company also, we are looking for opportunity investment to other countries in Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, and also other ASEAN countries. And inside Vietnam, we also have the joint venture with ASEAN and other non-ASEAN countries in banking, in mining, in property sector too. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe one final question, and then we'll close this out. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is maybe not the question, but if I will matter, compliance matter. Yeah, so I would like to sorry. Okay, again. I would like to raise one big matter that is the about the compliance matter for this region. Yeah. So I think that this is the one of the big question for this region. So I would like Khun Douglas to take into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, what the question was? Compliance? Very good. Okay, in full agreement. And I think we will end on that note and thank the panelists. I'd like to thank the panelists for making themselves available today. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you. So we will conclude now. Thank you.